quarterback in harm's way as the game goes along. But eventually, too, you also have to give him the football and let him make a play around the goal line and in the red zone.
We did see some of those La Magic type plays as well, being able to avoid would-be sacks in the backfield, as the offensive line still has some work to do, unfortunately, compared to a year ago. So you still have those elements, maybe getting the ball out a little bit quicker. That play that ended up being the safety. Okay, yeah, the protection should have been better, but you also could have gotten the ball away. If not, just thrown it out of bounds or something along those lines. Just make sure that he didn't get caught for the safety there. So again, all teachable moments at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think talking about his offensive line too. They played good, not great. There's a lot of teachable moments in that too, like for that group. And I think again, it's something that this group that the offense as a whole can build upon. It was really good. You saw good flashes of what it looked like when it was working, and a lot of things you can build on when it's not.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, and I will give a slight benefit of the doubt, because it did seem as though, we talked about it going into the weekend, that Shed Surratt likely could have been one of your guards, that left guard spot. We learned on Sunday that he was injured and wasn't even with the team over the weekend. So I do chalk maybe some of that up to the fact you didn't have your full expected starting unit. Rodney Newsom was out there. Marquis Anderson came in and played the second half at the left guard spot. So maybe that was the difference of, okay, the guy that you thought was going to be your starter isn't out there. So now you're going with options 2 and 3. But again, I really hope to see some significant improvements from that group, especially as we get into SEC play here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, big building opportunity here with SC State, too. This is where you can establish a game where you should be able to establish a run, get all of the pass protections, labeled or communicated out and worked out, as the game goes along. So big opportunity here this week to get it all worked out offensive line-wise.
Yeah, this is one of those weeks where the spotlight isn't on you as much.
Right.
And I thought it was cool, as we talked about so much in the summertime, that you got the opportunity to be the focal point of all of college football for 3.5 hours basically on Sunday. And again, it wasn't your prettiest game, but I think it reaffirmed what a lot of people think, that South Carolina is probably going to be pretty good overall. And the biggest question everybody had defensively, with all the talent that you lost to the NFL a year ago, obviously, looked really solid. Now, again, is it going to be as good as it was a year ago? We'll have to see, but it certainly looked like it wasn't that far off, at least on Sunday.
Yeah, defensively, I think, again, there was a lot of development, and I think the question marks on this defense were shored up pretty well. I think Fred Johnson, he's another one of those freaks. Tyler, how about leading the team in tackles for your debut? Yeah. The big blunder that, eventually led to the safety, taking it out of the end zone, but pretty impressive stuff from the true freshman out of Fred. And, I think that kid's going to keep growing and become, again, another great linebacker for Clayton White.
And that's another one of those classic teachable moments for somebody like J.R. Johnson, when you look at that and say, all right, man, next time you catch it, just go down in the end zone and, give the offense a better opportunity and a little bit more of a buffer there, for when they start their next drive. But I got to imagine if any of us were in that situation and we picked a ball off on the goal line, we'd probably look at that green grass too and say, man, that looks tempting. Yeah,
in your first college football game ever, I would certainly think so. Certainly had a lot of adrenaline and saw the green grass, in front of him. So why not run it out? But yeah, I think now he knows go down, give the offense some field position.
Well, let me ask you this. When you're playing, whether it be college football 25, 26, or Madden, if you picked off a ball in that exact same area, do you go down or do you try and return it?
You got to try and return it, Tyler, because the safety is less likely, and it's only 2 points,
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that big of a loss.
If I'm deep enough in the end zone, I typically go down, but I would say if I am on the goal line, like if I've only got a step or two to get out, I do give it a shot.
Right, because how cool is like 102, 103-yard return?
Well, and I don't know why this is for at least playing 25. I haven't bought 26 yet, but for some reason, every time you get an interception, whether you throw one or get one yourself, it's always a pick six, because for whatever reason, nobody can catch the guy that intercepts the ball. I haven't figured that out yet, why that is.
Yeah, I haven't switched over to 26 yet. I'm still, playing 25. Haven't really picked up the Xbox much these days. But, you got to try and take it back, especially in the video game.
Yeah, absolutely. So good to see those moments. And something else we touched on earlier as well, specialist also looked very solid on Sunday. You had William Joyce, kick one field goal, 27 yards. Not too challenging, but one to kind of get it out of the way, right? You wanted to give him something to ease his way in, neutral site, you're indoors, not having to deal with the elements and all those kind of things. And hopefully this weekend against SC State, he gets opportunities to kick something longer. Maybe we're dealing, it's going to be hot. Maybe it'll be a little bit of wind too. And, kind of ramp him up before you get into SEC play where, again, you look at some of these early opponents, whether it be, Vanderbilt or Missouri or, I don't know about Kentucky. We'll see on that one. But you could be in situations where critical field goals late in the game could become vitally important. You want him as ready as possible when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, South Carolina checked all boxes, special teams wise, on Sunday because, you had to. In a game with as much Frank Beamer and Beamer ball and all of that surrounding the game, you had to check the special teams box. I think South Carolina did great with it. Vakari Swain with an electric punt return that, swung momentum. You took the flag, took the penalty, kick it back. Let him see what he can do again. So electric stuff there. And, I think, special teams wise, it's just really good stuff. You had to be good in that game against Virginia Tech. As good as Shane's dad was at special teams, you had to be really good. So.
Shout out to Mason Love as well. 2 punts inside of the 10-yard line, 3 total inside the 20. Again, you don't never want to have to punt, right? But when you can have a punter that can do those kind of things, you feel good about it, coupled with what looks like another strong defense again, where you can say, okay, maybe we didn't score on this drive, but we know we can pin these guys back and rely on our defense to hold them at bay.
Yeah, absolutely. Another new face, Mason Love, getting the start. Good debut from him again. It's exactly what you want to see from your punter. And, shout out to Joe DeCamillis for getting these guys ready, man.
Holder and long snapper did well, too. You know why? Because we didn't have to talk about them.
Right, yeah.
They didn't make any mistakes.
Right, exactly. Going across the depth chart there, no problems there. Holder, long snapper. So, again, Beamer ball is in full effect. Special teams, special players.
So things went pretty well for South Carolina on Sunday. The same can't be said for North Carolina in the debut of Bill Belichick as their head coach last night as they took on TCU to wrap up week number 1. We'll dive into what happened with Old Chapel Bill in his college debut coming up next as the extra point. It's not the extra point, it's the halftime show. Rolls along Tyler Head, Joe Machika from the Walkthrough Media, Captain Dave along with you on your Tuesday here on The Game. Tyler Ed here for our friends over at Old Timey Meat Market. South Carolina has their first home game this upcoming weekend, and that means tailgating, which means grilling out all day long for that 7 o'clock kick. And if you need to stock up on meats, there's only one place to go, and that is Old Timey Meat Market. You'll find their shelves stocked with various cuts and grades of beef, pork, poultry, seafood, and exotic meats. The selections are always fresh, never frozen, competitively priced, and of the highest quality. And they quite literally have everything that you're going to need for your tailgate, not only this weekend, but throughout the entire season. You can get all you need at Old Timey Meat Market over in St. Andrews, South Congaree, or come to the one over in my neck of the woods in Lexington. Old Timey Meat Market, quality selection, a cut above the rest.
Proud of our players. It was certainly ugly at times. We made it harder on ourselves than we needed to.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from the Walkthrough Media hanging out with you here on your Tuesday on the Game. You kind of heard from Beamer there for a second. We'll actually hear from him live coming up at the top of the hour for his usual Tuesday press conference as he puts a bow on the Virginia Tech game and we move on to South Carolina State this upcoming weekend, which, again, no disrespect to the Bulldogs. That is a game that Carolina should hopefully win pretty comfortably, get to see some backups come in, and, just really empty out the bench. That's ideally how those games are supposed to go. Again, Carolina history has proven otherwise at times, but I feel good about Carolina's chances to handle their business this weekend.
Yeah, especially how you played last week against Virginia Tech. You feel like you can carry some of that momentum, into this week against SC State. Again, should be a, nice and easy win for you headed into Vandy, which, again, you should be favored in as well. But, you want to do the little things right and make sure you're carrying, all positive football with you into Vandy.
Absolutely. So things going well for South Carolina coming off of their first game of the season. Same cannot be said, unfortunately, for the North Carolina Tar Heels in the debut of Bill Belichick last night. Cut number 8 from today's list here, Dave. Here's a little snippet of how that went.
Rhythm. You throw in the interception, pick 6 by Bud Clark. Comfortable 13-point lead. And in my opinion, the way that first half went, it's a big drive for the North Carolina defense.
That was the Capital One rewarding performance, and this is a rewarding run as Gavorian Barnes is out the gate, inside the 30, to the 10. Touchdown TCU, 75 yards and no flags.
That was pretty much how the entire game went last night. TCU throttles North Carolina in Chapel Hill 48-14. That was a score that put it up 27-7 at that point in time early on in the third quarter. And yeah, the route was pretty much on from there.
Yeah, Tyler. Not quite the debut Chapel Bill wanted. You realize you got to stop the run in college, and you're not going to have all pro defensive tackles or guys that played at Alabama, Georgia to fill up the defensive line. Learning the lesson there, and it was a tough game to open it up. TCU, shout out Jeremiah Donati for the scheduling.
That's right. North Carolina surrendered 542 yards offensively. They got outrushed 258-50. My favorite stat of the night, and they kept this updated on the broadcast, Gio Lopez went 2 hours and 8 minutes in real time without throwing a complete pass. So he threw one complete pass at 8:12 p.m., did not throw another one until 10:20 p.m., which the game was already well out of hand by that point. It's
bad when they the graphics truck is cooking up time, Eastern Standard Time graphics. It's I don't know. What are we doing? You have to at least try to get them in rhythm, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, and I saw it was so funny scrolling back through Twitter either after the game last night or earlier on this morning, because North Carolina got the ball and immediately marched down the field and scored a touchdown on the opening drive, very much like South Carolina did on Sunday. And a lot of the national talking heads, Cowherd, Bayless, guys like that, were ready to anoint Bill Belichick as the greatest college football coach of all time. I never draw conclusions based on scripted drives, because what happens after that, that's the most important. And again, Carolina learned that on Sunday, where you had the great first drive and then kind of stalled out after that for a while until you got in the second half, because literally North Carolina did all of nothing for most of the rest of the game, save for a drive after Gio Lopez got hurt where Max Johnson led them down the field for one touchdown as he finished out the game. But yeah, whatever the script was fine, but after that, no.
Yeah, these guys were not ready to play past the script. And, you talked about South Carolina's script a little bit. Had tip to Mo Brown, former walk-on, getting the first play of the game.
Didn't see that coming.
Right, did not see that coming. That was huge. And, again, coming out of the fullback spot, that was big. But, yeah, no, I don't know. And Chapel Hill, you got to be able to adjust, and you really didn't see any of that much of the night. And, TCU came ready to play, too. That's also, P4 team.
I know, Sonny Dykes talked about it after the game that they felt disrespected, and I can understand that. When you look at the conversation around this game, it was all about Bill Belichick. The entire offseason, we've been fascinated by this phenomenon of what, many consider as the greatest NFL coach of all time, that the last couple years have not gone well. How's he going to do coming down into the college ranks? And it's like you almost didn't even know TCU was playing in this game because nobody was giving him a chance. There's no way Bill Belichick loses to TCU in his debut game. And lo and behold, that's what happened. And, Belichick, who's not one for showing emotions anyway, but he just had that like blank stare as he's walking off the field last night that I think maybe the reality of this is going to take some work is really setting in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to walk in, especially North Carolina. You had to do some work. It wasn't just portal work. We've seen him on the road recruiting, but it's going to take some deeper work to develop depth in college football. You got to get into the nitty gritty. You can't. It's not like the NFL to where you've got a couple starters and then your practice squad guys are the best players from wherever they're from, right? So it's kind of a grind in college football to develop a dynasty and do all that a little bit harder.
Well, the thing to me, and we've heard this so much this offseason, and Michael Lombardi has a regular spot on the Pat McAfee show every single week, so he's been front and center talking about North Carolina's process and the way they're running the program. We heard when Bill Belichick got there that, this is going to be the 33rd NFL team. We're going to run this like a pro team, do this, do that, as if they were coming up with something innovative and revolutionary in college football. You look at Texas, Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State. I can go on and on and on here.
Alabama.
LSU, Alabama. All these programs run themselves like NFL teams. Like, that's not a new concept. I don't know what Bill Belichick thought he was bringing to college football that nobody had considered before. Nutrition, workout programs, the way that they practice, like all that stuff has been vetted out to the umpth degree by the best programs that's made them the best programs. Like, it wasn't going to come in here and suddenly figure something out that nobody else knew.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes years to develop yourself as a blue blood in college football, and Bill Belichick just kind of thought he could come down in North Carolina and just, okay, blue blood here, everybody come play for me, we're going to walk in and be able to, do what we did in New England. And yeah, certainly not the case. It takes years of work and recruiting and being on the road and developing relationships and getting recruits from certain areas and whatnot. It takes work, man, going on the road. So Chapel Bill's certainly not, I guess, ready for it. I don't know.
And the question becomes, because again, they moved on from Mac Brown, who was the oldest coach in the FBS, to hire somebody that's practically his same age in Bill Belichick to a 5-year deal. And I'm like, is 5 years enough time? You know what I mean? Like, typically when you're hiring a coach for a program that had fallen on some hard times like North Carolina, you're thinking this is a long-term play. You want to hire a guy that's going to be there for hopefully 10, 15 years because you understand it's going to take some time to get this thing rolling. For Bill, it's like, if this year's a wash, it's only 4 more years left on the original deal if he even makes it that far. Like, it just seems like nobody quite understood what they were getting in this deal going into last night. And again, it's only one game. I'm not trying to completely overreact to it, but what a rough start.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the job Bill Belichick was meant to take, right? I feel like out of that offseason, it was going to be like the Alabama job was going to be the likely successor, right? But obviously didn't line up. You got Kalen DeBoer in there a year earlier before, Belichick comes down and whatnot. But I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem like a spot that we're, like you said, Tyler, North Carolina's in.
Sure.
He's the kind of guy to tap in the putt, right? To get you over the line to the national championship, or in Alabama's case, back to where you were.
And, you and I were talking before the show started here. A lot of the hype around Belichick this offseason was very reminiscent of Deion Sanders 2 years ago, where he's going to Colorado. Right. He's bringing his luggage, and it's Louis, all that kind of stuff, bringing in Travis Hunter as well as Shador. And funny enough, they also played TCU in his debut. They won that game. Yeah. Surprised a lot of people. They were, 2, maybe 3 touchdown dogs in that game and won it outright. And that was kind of like, okay, wow, all right. They at least came out of the gate swinging. This is the complete opposite. Deion Sanders at least had coached in college before at Jackson State. Different level, but still. Yep. Coaching in college is different than the NFL. This is something completely new for Bill Belichick that, and again, here's the thing. If you took the decals off the helmet and the Carolina blue off the jerseys, I would have thought that was an FCS team. That is how poorly they played last night. And similar to Alabama that we're going to get to here coming up in a couple minutes, you can't just flip a switch and suddenly make them try harder, make them be more talented, more athletic. Like, you have what you have at this point. And if they're going to play like that, I don't know if they're going to a bowl game.
Yeah, no, doubtful. In year one of Chapel Bill again, I don't know. I don't see any bright future for them again. They got to get something going, and I don't know. Does Bill Belichick have it in him to really kind of steer this ship around? And like you mentioned, Tyler, 5-year deal. Like, is he going to last that long? Like, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll certainly see, but not off to a great start there for Bill Belichick up there in Chapel Hill. Things also not going swimmingly out in T-Town right now for Kalen DeBoer, and yesterday it just got weirder with a press conference. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, along with you on your Tuesday on the Game. Tyred here for our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. We have a lot of nice weather here in the state of South Carolina, but sometimes it can get really, really hot, and sometimes it rains. And if you're planning on going out and golfing, that weather is something you always have to keep an eye on. But not if you go to Pro Swing Columbia, because you can golf on just about any course all over the world from the comforts of inside in a temperature-controlled environment with a open bar right behind the right behind where you're golfing at, as well as amenities like bathrooms and all those kind of things as well on the Golf Zone simulators. You can get on the Golf Zone simulators and go wherever you want in the world playing golf. You can rent by the hour, and they also have memberships available as well. And you actually get discounted rates to practice and play at Pro Swing if you're actively taking lessons with them as well. Book online at ProSwingColumbia.com or call 803-592-3916 for more information over at Pro Swing Columbia.
mentioned the great week before the game. Just how much do you self-scout the preparation before games, and are there times as a coach where maybe you notice during the week that things might not be going the way that you want them to?
You said, what do you mean, great week?
A great week. You said a great week of preparation.
For this week, you're saying, or are you referring to last week?
Going up to Florida State before that game.
I said that?
You said that, yeah, before.
Oh, just,
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from the Walkthrough Media, along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. That, of course, was the voice of Kalen DeBoer talking to the media yesterday off the heels of a embarrassing performance by the Crimson Tide down there in Tallahassee on Saturday, and things just got more awkward with not remembering what he said going into the game and that whole situation there. So it's just not looking good as of right now. I'm trying not to completely overreact because it is just one game, but we've never seen an Alabama team look that soft in a game in the past 17 years, basically. That was surprising.
Soft is a good word, Tyler. I was going to say that Bama defense had no edge to it. You can tell this team hasn't been getting dog cussed by Saban, right? Like that. Like it sounds like Kalen DeBoer has not been, putting his foot in somebody's rear end as much as he should be. Reports out of, like on Twitter, everyone's saying that the team's outlaid and all this stuff. Night before y'all, essentially Kalen DeBoer has lost the reins of this football team. And I don't know. Losing the reins at Alabama after Nick Saban, anybody's going to technically lose the reins. Nick Saban had that, program running like a well-oiled machine. So
right.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but it's not your daddy's Alabama.
Yeah, it's not losing handle. And I did see some of the speculation about what the players were doing before the game. And I don't know if any of that's true or not. That may just be message board hearsay at this point. But I do think that Kalen DeBoer has a different approach to the way he deals with players, the things that he allows his players to do, and the players are a lot more open with like things they get to do now, and media type of stuff that Nick Saban didn't quite allow. And you could say, he's just allowing players to be themselves, and that is true. But again, within the context of what Alabama football was, it's clearly being detrimental to what they're doing on the field.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. It feels like almost like a 180, when you go from, a stern old school coach like Saban into, I guess a little bit more of a player's coach like DeBoer. So, it's an adjustment for sure. But, based on, like, the fact that he said they had a good week of preparation leading up to it.
Clearly not.
Being coach speak, right? Yeah. And then when he got asked that question, he's like, what? Like, he had no idea. Like, no, they didn't have a good week of prep. But, like, it wasn't good. And, obviously looked that way.
Nick Saban did have some thoughts on what happened on Saturday in Tallahassee. Cut number 7 here, Dave. Here's Nick Saban last night on ESPN prior to the TCU North Carolina game, sharing his thoughts on what he saw from his former team.
Yeah, well, that's all about what they did last year. Yeah, that creates the expectation for this year. But, obviously for me and for a lot of the Bama fans, the disappointment that Florida State dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Yep. But the good news is every team has the best opportunity to improve from week 1 to week 2. Because really going into the season, you don't really know what you have for sure as a coach. And you're always very anxious about what might happen in the first game. And I'm sure they're all disappointed, players, coaches alike. But they do have a great chance to improve from week 1 to week 2. That's when you usually make the biggest improvement. LSU, Miami, and Ohio State all really impressed me. But I think Texas, Notre Dame, and Clemson all have a really good chance to have great teams this year, too, if they make the progress they're capable.
So going back to the first point, is they're talking about Alabama, and this is why I'm not trying to overreact too much, because he's right. You can have a bad week 1, and the rest of the season can be that much better. Carolina had a rough week 1 last year. They still won, but nobody would have thought a team that beat Old Dominion by 4 points would be knocking on the door of the college ball playoff come December. That's exactly what happened. So I'm not ready to bury Alabama just yet, but the things that I saw on Saturday are things that I don't feel like can be fixed as easily because it's an effort thing. It's a trying thing. It's a mentality type of thing that goes back to what you do in the entire offseason, right? If you're messing up. If you're a receiver and you're messing up running your routes, that's technique, right? That's something that you can drill in practice, try and fine tune. Effort is not. Effort is something you either have or you don't. And again, it goes back to their conditioning. It goes back to the way that they were training in the offseason, all those kind of things. I don't feel like you can just go into practice on Monday and say, all right, guys, we got to try harder. And everybody's like, okay. And it just flips the switch. I don't think it works that way.
Right. I know this is going to be something that this Alabama team is going to have to build towards the end of the season. You know, just continually work on effort. And again, back to Saban's point, I guess you really don't know what you have. And I kind of feel like that's the way that DeBoer was kind of reacting, you know, when he, you know, gave the coach speak answer of, yeah, we had a good week, and then was, you know, I guess, quote unquote, or just, you know, wasn't ready for the question. But I don't know. I think, you know, certainly going to take a lot of work to get back to where they're from, you know, and different. Just, again, it's a different Alabama. They didn't have the same edge. The defense, again, needs to, you know, be mean. And they just, like you said, Tyler, at the beginning of this segment, soft.
It's a growing trend that Kalen DeBoer struggles on the road. You know, most of his losses in his time as a head coach, not many of them, but most of them do tend to come in road environments. And I went back and looked at some numbers, and it's becoming a bigger concern at Alabama. And this also counts the neutral site game in the bowl game against Michigan. But his record, neutral and road, is 2-5 at Alabama as of right now. They are scoring on average 17 fewer points on the road. They are allowing 10 more points on the road. They are accumulating 133 fewer yards offensively on the road as well. And your numbers are going to be down a little bit on the road. That's just kind of natural to football. But these significant differences are alarming.
Right, yeah, and the fact that it's stacking up in really every category, right? You know, you sometimes you'll see a couple different categories off on the road, and especially in the SEC, too. It's tough to win on the road, especially at noon and whatnot. So, I don't know. I think Florida State also, you know, a quality program, too. Mike Norvell needed a big step in that one. They were working with Corso magic as well. Like, right, you had a little bit of Corso magic in the air, and Norvell, you know, certainly making a statement. Thomas Castellanos, he had been talking all offseason about what he was going to do to Alabama. So, if he didn't back it up, oh, boy.
He backed it up all right.
Yes, certainly.
Give him credit.
Certainly backed it up on Saturday there. And, again, big win for Norvell and Florida State.
One thing that really stuck out to me, too, I heard this statistic yesterday or Sunday or whenever it was, and I had to look it up to make sure. In Kalen DeBoer's tenure at Alabama, now 14 games in, they have never been out-penalized by another team. So they were penalized, 8 times on Saturday. That's another example of them having more penalties than the other side. They've tied with a couple teams in penalties, but nobody's had more penalties than Alabama, you know, under Kalen DeBoer. And that also speaks to discipline, right? And there was a situation where I think it was Castellanos got sacked on Saturday, and, you know, would have been a great play for the defense, and then an additional player comes in and just, you know, lays on him, basically falls on top of him, 15-yard penalty, those kind of things. It's those kind of things that add up and can be a difference in a game like that was only decided by, you know, 2 touchdowns. But again, it kind of speaks to preparation, training, and all that kind of stuff, that you're having very undisciplined penalties out of your guys that will end up costing you.
Yeah, Tyler, a couple flags week 1. I mean, it happens. But when you compound and continue to add undisciplined flags, like, you know, personal fouls and stuff like that as the game goes along, that is an undisciplined team. And so you got to fix that.
I can forgive procedural things a little bit more in week number 1 because, again, it's first game. Again, you're either new to the team, you're working with a lot of new guys. Like, those kind of things are going to happen. Like Dylan Stewart lining up offsides. Like, all right, you know, not the greatest thing in the world, but I can forgive that a little bit, as opposed to unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, things that happen after the whistle. Those are the things that become unacceptable, because that's universal football with things you are not supposed to do.
Right, and even some of, like, the chippy stuff is all right, because, like, it's week 1. You haven't seen a team, you know, in a different jersey yet either. So, you know, obviously you're going to get into the game a little bit too much. But then when it compounds like it did for Alabama down there in Florida on Saturday, like, it, you know, a worst case scenario.
So what else happened around the SEC? We'll hit that coming up next to wrap up the hour. And, of course, Shane Beamer coming up at 1 o'clock for his usual Tuesday press conference as the halftime show rolls along, presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. It's our Joe Machika from the Walkthrough Media hanging out with you on your Tuesday here on the game. Again, we're about 13 minutes away from Coach Beamer's press conference on your Tuesday as he'll put a bow on Virginia Tech. So we're looking ahead to SC State this upcoming weekend. Also get some updates on some injuries as well to guys like Judge Collier, who, of course, got injured early in the game on Sunday and was seen with the brace on after that. So it does look pretty serious, and we'll get an update here coming up in a couple of minutes. I did want to kind of just gloss over the rest of the SEC because over the weekend, of course, you had the high-profile games, Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, obviously Alabama and Florida State, and a lot of, SEC teams played against lesser opponents, FCS, G5, that kind of stuff. Georgia blew out Marshall. Florida blew out Long Island, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Tennessee, though, I think surprised a lot of people because they beat a pretty good team from a year ago in Syracuse pretty handily in Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday as Joey Aguilar looked every bit the part in that Heupel offense. Yeah,
Tennessee not missing a beat without Nico, right? This team was supposed to be good with Nico coming in. Without him, you were kind of worried. It's like, okay, are they going to look any different? Nope. Beating Syracuse P4 team up there in the Carrier Dome.
That was a Mercedes-Benz.
It was
on Saturday before Carolina, Virginia Tech.
That's right, correct.
But still, nonetheless, impressive. And, I was skeptical, especially with how everything went down with Aguilar, of, okay, how's he going to fit inside this offense? Because the Heupel offense isn't made for everybody. But, man, he looked really good. Now, his completion percentage could certainly be up because he was right at 50. But, man, some of the balls that he threw with the guys getting wide open, it looks like it's going to be a good combination there in Knoxville this year.
Yeah, Josh Heupel certainly has himself something. And, Tennessee, again, another year in the SEC where they can't be overlooked. Going to be a scary team coming down the stretch in, October, November.
On Friday night, you had Auburn taking on Baylor on the road, a game that I think we were all anticipating in terms of the dysfunction that Auburn seems to have had this offseason. We talked in the past couple of weeks about them playing multiple quarterbacks and multiple play callers and all this kind of stuff. And they went out there and had a pretty sound game, at least offensively, led by Jackson Arnold, 108 yards through the air, 137 yards on the ground, and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, could do some work. They did give up quite a few yards, through, defensively, nearly almost 500. But they were able to score 38 points, win 38-24, and silence some of the critics, at least to start the season, for what's going to be a very pivotal year for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I know it's going to be big. I think you got a really talented guy there, backing up Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight, a guy that they're really excited about. But, yeah, it was a big win over Baylor. You had to go to Baylor to get that one done, too. So, I wouldn't say a statement win yet. I don't know if we can take anything away from that win other than, beating a good Baylor team. And Baylor, team, kind of struggling for relevancy, I guess. Still kind of hanging around up there. But, again, for this Hugh Freeze, Auburn program, like I don't know if we saw it coming or what. A game we expected them to win, but, we didn't expect them to win it like that.
Well, it's one of those things that we didn't know if Jackson Arnold's struggles last year were on him or on the situation he was in, playing at Oklahoma behind a bad offensive line, not having receivers. And again, it's one game, but he looked like what people kind of expected him to be, at least against Baylor.
Yeah, right, exactly. Again, a surprise there. And I mean, talk about Oklahoma, too, like John Mateer.
Yeah, Mateer looked good.
Yeah, he did. And, beating some allegations there coming into the season.
It was Illinois State.
Right, it was Illinois State. And, again, we'll see this. Venables, I guess, still on the hot seat once they start playing more quality opponents. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess, I was certainly surprised with the Auburn situation. I don't know. I figured it would be all downhill for Auburn.
Interesting game. Texas A&M playing host to UTSA. This game was close in the third quarter. I was kind of scoreboard watching a little bit. A&M ends up winning 42-24, but not a comfortable win by any means. Gave up quite a few yards on the ground as well as they got outrushed. Let's see, 203 to only 110 in that game. And I am interested to see what this means for A&M. Maybe it was first game jitters, or maybe they're not quite as good as we thought they were. Marcel Reed, efficient day through the air, but that defense is maybe a little concerning if I'm looking at A&M after one game.
Yeah, I thought the offense looked good for A&M from what I saw from that game. Again, you're right, Tyler, it was close. I think it's just one of those games where, week one, you you get a little complacent after, things go well early. You find a little success, but I don't know. The defense isn't what it used to be. I think, you lost, again, a lot of talent on that defense to the NFL. Marcel Reed, again, was good. He's going to be somebody to watch here as, Texas A&M, that game comes up on the schedule too. But we'll see. If that defense can piece some things together, shore up some of the gaps, they could be scary as well. But we'll have to see.
Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State pick up pretty comfortable wins to start the season. The most uncomfortable win was Kentucky, 24-16 over Toledo, a game that everybody expected the Rockets to cover the 10-point spread, which they absolutely did, as this game was a slog for most of it. I was also kind of scoreboard watching a little bit, as Kentucky was never really able to pull away from them throughout most of this game, and Zach Calzada didn't look great. Running game looked good. Dante Dowdle had 129 yards on the ground and a touchdown, but it looks like it's probably going to be a long season for Mark Stoops and the Wildcats.
I was going to say Mark Stoops is running the football, but he's also running the program, directly, or further into the ground, I guess, as you try to establish the run game. And sure, you can be, the running the football team in the SEC, but you got to do it successfully. I don't think Calzada has enough, to be, for them to, be scary and maybe an upset potential threat. I don't know. It's Kentucky's already, as per usual, seems like they've moved on to basketball season over there in Lexington.
I certainly feel better about the game against Kentucky here in a couple weeks. And again, only week one, so nothing's impossible in terms of a turnaround. But I would need to see significant steps forward in the next couple weeks for me to look at Kentucky and say, okay, that's a team when you really need to be scared of.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the way that South Carolina's linebackers played too on Saturday or on Sunday, Fred or J.R. Johnson in his debut gives you a lot of faith that this defense is going to be able to stop the run. But again, you got to be able to do it when the ball is snapped, right? Some days you can come out flat and not be able to stop the run. You got to be able to do it against Kentucky. It's your one job defensively.
There's your look around the SEC as we kind of put a bow in week one. We'll start to transition into week number 2, and SC State coming up next with Shane Beamer talking to the media for his usual Tuesday press conference. We'll have that for you as we dive into hour number 2 here on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave along with you. Watching the podium, waiting for Coach Beamer to get there. He's always a minute or so late. We'll see. Dave, just let me know in my ear when he's ready to rock and roll over there as we wait to hear from him. And, again, kind of put some final thoughts on Virginia Tech and start to look ahead to SC State this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you got to put that one to bed, especially in the SEC. You know, you got a tune-up game again with SC State ahead. Need to check every box this week against SC State. You know, develop good habits and get everything going.
And it's a short week because obviously, you know, you played on Sunday, but again, I feel like you're not going to be at that much of a disadvantage. It's a night game on Saturday, too, so almost the same kind of like rest time you would have as opposed to playing at noon or something like that. So, again, we'll hear all those things from Coach Beamer coming up here in a minute. As Dave, I believe we're ready to rock and roll, right? All right, and here's Coach Beamer.
Tuesday for you guys and for us as well. Looking back on Sunday in Atlanta, a lot of what I thought after the game, just really proud of our guys. That was a really good first win. As I had mentioned leading into it, that wasn't an easy preparation, getting ready for Virginia Tech, just first game, wild environment, neutral site, new coordinators, new personnel on both sides. It was a lot, and I thought our guys handled it well. Great start to the game, really good finish, some good in between, not enough of it, but when there was adversity, when a lot of teams could have gotten frustrated, our guys didn't faze them at all. They never flinched, they never blinked, had great poise, played really physical. That was a physical football game on both sides as well. Proud of our guys and the physicality they played with, proud of the effort that they played with. It wasn't always pretty, but you could never question the effort that they were playing with, without a doubt. As I said, you know, great start, situational football. Feel like we got to be better. You look at, you know, two things that are critical in games: backed up on offense. We had that after Fred's interception, and we took over on the 2-yard line. That's what we call backed up, and we were obviously not very good. We gave up 2 points there. First play, we ID'd the front the wrong way and allowed our linebacker to run through and make a tackle unblocked. And then the second play, we don't make a great decision quick enough to get rid of the ball, and we get beat in protection as well. So we all had a hand in that. Coaches, all players on the offense, and we gave up a safety. That can't happen. Defensively, flip it. We call it green zone, but when the other team is backed up, which we had Virginia Tech after one of Mason's punts, they took over on like the 5-yard line coming out, and then they went right down the field on our defense, which was disappointing. And I had the ball on the 38-yard line going in, and that's when they got the penalty, the unsportsmanlike conduct or late hit, whatever it was, on the sideline. And then I think Dylan sacked the guy on the next play and then ended up punting, but didn't like the way we played football in those two situations, particularly from a field position standpoint. We need to certainly be better, but really like the way that we finished the game to be up 2 scores, to get the ball back with over 4 minutes left. We were somewhat backed up. They had 3 timeouts. We were going to run our offense, but everybody in the stadium knew we were probably going to run the ball a lot there just to make them burn timeouts, and we were trying to get first downs, don't get me wrong. But to do that, take over with 4 minutes plus, they have 3 timeouts, and never give the ball back was a great way to finish. And they knew we were going to run it, particularly at the end when they didn't have any timeouts. We knew we were going to run it as well, and did a nice job. Now, we went forward on that 4th down. A lot of that was Lenore Sellers. We need to get better at being able to do that and finish games, because he made some great individual plays. But before that 4th down, I mean, DQ was behind me, and I said, "You want to go for this?" And he was like, "Heck yeah," as well. And that's why we went for it right there instead of punting it back. We got to block it a little bit better. But Lenore is just a great play to make the first down and then take 3 knees. So I like being able to finish games like that. We call that 4-minute offense, where we're winning and the other team's trying to stop you and get the ball back because they're losing, to not give it back. So that was great. We'll grow from Sunday. There's so much from a character standpoint that we'll take from that game and grow from it and be better for it. A lot of freshmen that played in their very first college games, a lot of transfers that were playing in their very first game, either at the Power 4 level or here at South Carolina. As well. So we'll definitely be better. Dang it, I know that, what's that guy on social media that counts all the as well? So I'm trying to be better today. So somebody sent me that one. I just did it too. So last one, I'm going to be cognizant of it. No more of those. I didn't realize I did that. And then I counted. I'm like, holy crap, I do a lot of that. Looking back, though, our offensive players of the game as coaches, when we come back and watch the tape after the game, who we saw that we felt like were the players of the game, Nick Harbor and Lenora Sellers. Offensively is what our offensive staff felt like. Defensively, Fred Johnson, he was awesome throughout, as you guys know, SEC Player of the Week. Brandon Cisse did a great job as a corner. He played corner, he played nickel, he did it all on Sunday, and they were challenging him at the point of or with some one-on-one throws, and he did a great job. Special teams was the SEC Player of the Week or Co-Player of the Week, whatever it was Vakari Swain. And then our scout players of the week offensively were Reno Rome and Cutter Woods. Cutter's doing a great job and continues to get better. Defensively, Donovan Darden and Kelvin Hunter. And then special teams-wise was Kendall Daniels, and all those guys were on the trip. Those last three, Kelvin Hunter, Darden, and Daniels, they were on the trip, and it's because they practice well and their arrows are pointing up, along with a lot of those guys. At scout teams here, maybe at other schools, you go into the scout team and you're in purgatory for the rest of the year, and we don't do that here. We put our guys that are going to be playing for us, we put them, and that's how they get better. I don't like guys standing around and watching during practice because you're not getting better that way. So those guys are continuing to get better. Injury update, Judge Collier and JT Gear are the only two coming out of the game against Virginia Tech that we're concerned about. I would say they are doubtful for this week, but thankfully it won't be long-term. We were a little concerned about Judge, his injury being long-term, but it wasn't and won't be. Don't know if they'll be quite ready this week, but we'll see. They're trying like heck to get back, and then looking forward to this Saturday night to be back home against a South Carolina State team that has so much tradition, so much pride in their program, and rightfully so, a team that's won multiple conference championships in recent years, played for the HBCU National Championship last year as well, and there's some great football that's being played in that conference and across the country as well, across the country. So they do a great job. I've got a lot of respect for Coach Barry. We actually invited him to come speak at our high school coaches clinic this spring here in Columbia, and did a great job. I sat there and took a lot of notes because I see his interviews on television, or I watch him somewhere on TV, and just his enthusiasm and his passion, it's impressive. And he's another great coach down there in Orangeburg in a long line of great coaches that have been there, whether it be Coach Jeffries, Coach Pugh, two guys that I have a ton of respect for and are great human beings, and Coach Barry. I don't know him as well as Coach Jeffries and Coach Pugh, but they're very, very, very similar. Great coaches and great people. They've got a team with a lot of new transfers that are really good players that have made an immediate impact, and then some great returning players off last year's team that won a conference championship and had a heck of a year. So we know that we'll get their best shot on Saturday night. I know they're going to be excited about coming to Columbia and playing in a sold-out Williams-Brice Stadium, but our players are as well. So thanks to our fans, one, for what they did in Atlanta on Sunday. That was awesome. The crowd that we had and what a home game it felt like for us. So thanks to our fans for that. They were amazing. That walk that we had when we got to the stadium was spectacular. And then they were spectacular throughout the game. And we know they will be Saturday night. So it's amazing that it's already sold out. I know they're excited about coming to see the 2025 Gamecock football team in person. We are also, and looking forward to that on Saturday night. Questions?
Shane, after cutting up the film and everything, how do you think the offensive line, specifically interior, played? They had some plays, but it did seem like there was some struggles with run and pass block.
It was. We got to be better. There's no question about it. And as I've said before, David, some of that's on offensive line, some of that's on running back, some of that's on tight ends as well. But there's no question there were some times that we got beat at the point of attack, didn't have maybe the push. Now, there were a lot of times where they had 8, 9 guys up there around the box too, and we knew there were going to be some runs into some big boxes and things like that. Their movement got us a couple times. There's no question that we got to be better, but not concerned at all. It was Rodney Newsom's first time playing in a Gamecock uniform. It was Boaz Stanley's first time playing in a Gamecock uniform. Tro didn't play a ton for us last year. Marquis, same thing. So you got a lot of guys that were out there for the first time, and they will be better going forward. And we'll continue to do a great job as coaches of helping those guys also. But you know, let's not lose sight. I think we were 4th in the SEC last year in rushing as well. So it's not like we've just gotten the crap kicked out of us in the run game. We ran the ball pretty damn good last year too. And we can't just say, well, that was all Lenore Sellers. We ran it pretty good. I can remember a lot of 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s where we had explosive touchdown runs where we handed it to a running back and he rolled up through there, whether it be LSU, A&M, whoever it might be. So we ain't starting that freaking narrative again this year. And I'm not talking to you. I'm just we can run the ball around here, and we're going to.
With all the talk on the outside about the defensive tackles coming into this season, and then the Travian situation and changing how things went, how did you feel about the performance? And it looked like from watching during the game on Sunday that Jamil Walker was kind of a communication with those guys. I guess Dove was in the press box.
Yes.
For that.
I thought they played. I thought they did some really good stuff. I thought they played hard. I thought they were active. Nick, Gabe, Kel, Devontae Miles, Troy Pikes, they all got in there. That's what I was proud of. Or excited about was just the way that the effort that they played with, and they're strong at the point of attack. But then they're good athletes and can run. So I thought they were good, and they will continue to get better. It was great to get Troy out there. I mean, that's a guy that didn't go through spring practice for us, and he is just going to continue to get better. He was very active and brings something to us from a pass rush standpoint. So it was good. We got to continue to improve. We got to be better. We got to be better against the pass and generating pressure on the quarterback. And yes, Jamil Walker was engaged. Like the way we do things, all of our strength coaches in practice kind of hang with a position group, whether it be in summer workouts when we're doing conditioning. There were certain groups, and then in practice, they, not all the time, but they spend their time with specific groups. And Jamil, he's always with the defensive tackles during the summer. During practice, he's with them a lot, and he's not involved so much in the X's and O's aspect of it, but he's around those guys and he has relationships with them. So he was a little bit more involved last week during the week. Dove was coaching him, don't get me wrong. Coach Walker was just a little bit more active with him. And then on game day, we kept Jordan in the box because he's really, really good at what he does, just being able to communicate down on the field to Clayton and the rest of the coaches what's going on before you get the iPad in your hand and come look at it after the series. So we didn't want to lose that by bringing him down on the field. So he was still in the box. He was in charge of all the substitutions, but Jamil was able to hear and help facilitate some of the substitutions and communication as well. Also,
you spoke about Chennis. He's already had so much success at SC State very quickly. He also had a lot of success at Benedict. What do you make of what he's been able to do at multiple programs around our community? Yeah, he's just a winner. He's won everywhere that he's been, and when you're around him and you listen to him, you understand why. Like I said, when he came and spoke at our clinic, I mean, there's things that I wrote down that coaches were all thieves and steal quotes and things like that. And there's things that I stole from him when he came and spoke at our clinic, but got a lot of respect for him. I did not know him when he was here in Columbia coaching, just followed him. And then obviously I've met him now that he's been down in Orangeburg, but just a guy that
understands what it takes and has a high standard, and you can watch his players play, and they get it also. And some guys, they know what it's about, and they're just winners, and that's certainly what he's been able to do at other stops, and what he's doing in Orangeburg also.
Beyond just how he played on Sunday, what impresses you the most about Mason Love? And obviously you referenced how you've always had Kai, but Kai told me that he was worried last year Mason was better than him and going to take his spot. So just sort of that dynamic and what impresses you about Mason now.
He's he's steady and mature, and nothing seems to affect him. A lot of the same ways when people ask me to describe Lenoris, I would say the same thing about Mason, just his demeanor, and that he's this all the time. And I was kidding with him last week. Every time I see him, he's got his headphones on, and I asked him, like, do you take those off at home? Because he lives with David Busey, and I asked David, and does he ever, like, take those off, or does he just walk around the house with them on as well? And he's not antisocial. He's a great young man. It's just he's just very, it's like he's got tunnel vision, and I feel like he takes care of his body. For him to be a young guy, he's very much a pro. He's in the weight room in the mornings, just taking care of his body, stretching long before anyone else is in there, even when he doesn't have to be. And then even, I guess it was yesterday evening, I mean, our players were off, and I was out here just getting some exercise, and I was walking around the practice field just calling recruits for 45 minutes just to take a break from football, and the players were long gone, and he's in the weight room last night at, what time was that, probably 7:30. He's in the weight room last night just stretching and getting his body prepared for practice today. So he's just very much a pro from that standpoint, and has a great focus. I told him last week, like, a lot of the best kickers I've been around, and I love kickers, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of them that they're a little different. He's not. And the best ones that I've been around, whether it be Spencer Lanning and Ryan Suckup when I was here at Carolina, or Joey Sly when I was at Virginia Tech, or Austin Seibert when I was at Oklahoma, or Jake Camarda when I was at Georgia. They're just football guys, if that makes sense. And I would say the same thing about Mason also.
Two-parter for you. Oscar was in here earlier just saying that the first drive was not scripted. Was that the case?
Yes and no, but more yes than no. Maybe we don't tell them. Sorta. I mean, we have openers where this is going to be the first play of the game, so I knew what the first play was going to be 3 days before the game. I knew that we were going to do that play. We also have plays that we want to get to early in the game. So I'd say, yeah, it was scripted. So maybe Black didn't tell him, but we have a walkthrough the day before the game where we kind of go through the opening plays. So unless he forgot about it, we did the day before the game.
And that first drive in general, I mean, it just seemed like everything was working for you guys. Do you feel like that was the case? And how much confidence does that give you that you guys can potentially go out there and replicate that week to week?
Yeah, it was great that we did that. I mean, we had talked about, even if we had won the toss, taking the ball because we wanted to get our offense out there early. You got a weapon in Lenoris, and wanted to get those guys going. So certainly you want to start games that way. I know our record's pretty good around here when we score first, so anytime we can do that, we want to, and that was great. And I know what Oscar was saying. Was it necessarily scripted, Jack, where we knew the first 10, this is exactly what it's going to be? No, but we do go into every game with, this is the first play. These are the initial, 10 plays that we want to call early in the game. This is what we're going to call on the first third and short. This is what we're going to call on the first third and medium. We knew we wanted to mix in some tempo early in the game because Virginia Tech had a new defensive coordinator. They had a lot of new players. We wanted to make them think as well with some of the stuff we were doing, and we threw some different formations at them, some misdirection, some tempo to try and blitz them, if you will, with just what we were doing offensively. So I thought Mike did a great job that series. I thought the players did a great job executing. And anytime we can start games like that, absolutely, we want to be able to do that.
Shane, with the SEC going to 9 conference games next year, and all the emphasis on strength of schedule and building up your playoff resume. What's your philosophy when it comes to scheduling schools like SU State and other in-state schools?
I love it. I think it's great for the state of South Carolina, and I want to be able to continue to do that. I know South Carolina State played Wofford the other night, and we played Wofford last year. We've played Furman. We're playing Coastal this year, and I know Coastal's not FCS, but we've played South Carolina State in previous years. So I want to be able to continue to play the schools in South Carolina. I think it's great. I know Clemson's played the Citadel and different people since I've been here as the head coach. So I'm all for it. Obviously, Jeremiah, myself, and Jeff Crane, we all have to kind of sit down and look at future schedules. But I definitely want to continue to play Clemson. I've said that publicly, and that hasn't changed. And certainly there's other games that you mix in there, and you certainly got to look at strength of schedule. I realize that, but I don't want to necessarily lose the opportunity to play these games going forward as well, and not go play whoever, Eastern Oregon or somebody. I think that's a school, but y'all know what I'm saying. Somebody out west. I'd love, if you're going to play an FCS team, I'd love it to be somebody from here in this state.
Just wanted to ask you about two guys. Michael Smith and Jared Brown seem to be a little limited from a snap count perspective. Was that an injury thing that was kind of holding them back?
Yeah, primarily. Jared was healthy, but he was a little bit limited in practice leading into the game. So we had planned on playing him, but then when we got into the game, we just didn't feel like, and we didn't feel like he was quite where he needed to be as the game went on. Mike had been a little bit limited, but also, practice matters here, and not saying that he didn't practice well, but we just felt like Brady Hunt, Jordan Dingle, and Mo Brown had been a little bit more efficient in practice going into the game, and we had planned on playing Mike a little bit more than what he did, but he got a catch and didn't have a ton of reps. But those are two guys that are two of our better players, and we need them to prepare the right way during the week and then be able to go play more on Saturdays than what they did the other day.
Two things. One, we saw Travian had a pretty cool tweet after the game. What's his update, and is there a chance that he could be back on the sidelines this week?
I would say this week is doubtful. I just had a text from him before I came in. We gave him a game ball after the game, so Justin King had sent him a video of me telling the team in the locker room that we were giving him a game ball, and he sent me a text and responded. It was funny. I got on the plane after the game, and Clayton was sitting a couple rows behind me and said that he had gotten a text from Travian that he was so amped up watching the game that the doctors had to come into the hospital room and give him medicine for his blood pressure because it was sky high during the game as well. So that guy is Mr. Gamecock. You guys know that. So he's eager to get back. Our coaches, myself, we talk to him fairly regularly. He'll be back, soon, but I don't think it's going to be this week.
I think back even last year against Alabama, Missouri, Clemson, and this year, what happens to Lenoris when it gets to the fourth quarter?
He's just a competitor, and I think when you get in those moments, competitors and guys that are just winners, they take over, and he hates to lose. And I just go back to, practice, where it may be a situation where we're in a competitive period against the defense, and the first offense is out there, then maybe it's time for the second offense to come out there, and he gets mad. And there's been times where he's come up to me and asked, can I stay? Because he doesn't want to come out, because he doesn't want to hear DQ Smith talking trash to him and running his mouth and all that as well. He's just a fierce competitor, and you see that in games. And you saw that, like I said, at the end of the game the other day, the third down run and then the fourth down run that he had on that last drive was, impressive. I mean, the fourth down run, it was a different formation, but similar play to what we scored on the very first series. And Virginia Tech had it defended pretty well. Their corner, that I think it was a corner or safety that came up to kind of set the edge, he did it, but doing it on paper and then being able to get Lenoris on the ground are different things, and he just refused to be denied. And I think that's what it comes down to, is just what a competitor he is, and when the bigger the moment is, the better he's going to be.
You have a walk-on kicker in William Joyce, who's been here all 5 years that you've been here. I'm curious, what's that relationship like, and also how have you seen him grow from freshman walk-on to now starting kicker?
Yeah, really proud of him. I'd say the same thing about Cole, and I mentioned this to the team today in the team meeting, that Cole's a guy that sat behind Matthew Bailey and Hunter Rogers for 4 years, kind of waiting his turn, and then he's taking advantage of it. Same thing with William. William's always been a talented kicker, and he's continued to just kind of commit to the program and work hard and try and be the best teammate that he could be. And he's had a role in this team in previous years, but obviously his role now is bigger than what it's been. But, just proud of him. He enjoys being a part of this program, and we've treated him the right way. He's made us better during his time here, and he's earned it. I mean, it wasn't like he got this job by default. We got some really talented guys out there, whether it be Mason Love, whether it be him, whether it be Peyton Argent, Max Kelly. There's talented kickers on this team, and William earned the opportunity to go out there and start on Sunday, and excited to see him continue to grow, because he's really worked hard for this opportunity.
I think the average third down distance on Sunday was 9 yards to go. What do you think you guys, after watching the tape from the game, need to do maybe a little better on first and second down to get some more third and shorts?
Yeah, that's hard when you're in that number of third downs, or that number of long distances on third downs. We got to be better. Obviously, it's be better on first and second, whether it's play calls, execution, whatever it might be as well. Whatever it might be. Some of those penalties, we had some pre-snap penalties there that got us in some longer situations. So it's hard to call plays on third and long. We've got to be better on first and second down. That's where it begins. And I think it's offense and defense. I mean, we had too many 7, 8, 9 yard runs. We got stops defensively, but defensively we had too many like 2nd and 1s and 2nd and 2s and 2nd and 3s, more than I can remember. But no matter what you do on third down, basically your success on third down, offense and defense, is going to be based on what you do on first and second down. And I know it's not cliche, but it's pretty simple from my standpoint. We've got to be better, and each week is different, and it's every game is different. We weren't good enough against Virginia Tech, and need to be better against South Carolina State Saturday night.
Shane, for those of us who watched from home, the cameras caught you with your dad at the end of the game, where you elicited BEAMER ball to him, which got a grin out of him, I know. For you as a family, with all the other factors going in there with who you were playing and your alma mater and all that, how special was it to have a play like that, the Vicari's play, with your dad there? And can you talk a little bit about the timing of it, how it figured into the flow of the game? You're leading, but you're not blown away, and then all of a sudden that run comes up, and it seemed like that kind of set your guys free.
Yeah, that was a big moment, certainly playing Virginia Tech, and to score on special teams with your dad in attendance, which he's in attendance for most of our games, but to be doing it against Virginia Tech, where that's where the whole BEAMER ball mantra began. You couldn't have scripted that any better. I remember in my dad's last game at Virginia Tech as the head coach was in the Independence Bowl, and it was against Tulsa, and the head coach at Tulsa is currently Virginia Tech's offensive coordinator now, which is kind of crazy in full circle. But I remember in that game, I think we returned a punt for a touchdown in that game. I know we scored on special teams. I think it was a punt return for a touchdown. And I remember thinking that night in Shreveport, because I was coaching as an assistant, how fitting it is that in my dad's last game at the Independence Bowl, because that was his first bowl game back in '93, and they scored on special teams, blocked a field goal, ran it back for a touchdown in the '93 Independence Bowl. Torian Gray was on the field for that. That I remember thinking that night in 2015, how cool is this? We're back in Shreveport, site of his first bowl game, and we scored on special teams again. And if y'all looked that up and we didn't score on special teams, I'm sorry. I really think we did. But I say that then you fast forward to Sunday and kind of the same thing, like how fitting you score on special teams when you're playing Virginia Tech, and your dad's in attendance, and we needed it. We obviously we got off to a great start offensively, and there was a defensive struggle, and there's only so many more times that we can keep putting our defense back out there without producing some points offensively. And they've got good players at Virginia Tech. The quarterbacks are really good players, you guys know, and those receivers really played well for them the other day. So we needed something to happen on special teams. They punted, had a good kick. I think it was a 40-something yard net, and they had the penalty. So then I mentioned it in the post-game press conference that really liked the idea of them re-kicking in any situation. But in that game, we felt like we had a depth advantage on special teams because we felt like we had more players overall, offense, defense, and special teams, and that's going to affect the special teams. So those guys are tired. If they got to go cover a punt, now they got to come back and do it again. So when I thought about it, wanted to make them re-kick from that standpoint. Too, when you have a 40-something yard net, you bank on we could get better field position even if we don't get a return here. And then it all just worked out, and what a great play Vakari made. I mean, there's so many cool things on there to point out. That, I mean, you got a guy like DQ Smith, who's a 4-year starter. He's out there busting his butt on a double team against them. There's a double team at the point of attack with Mo Brown and Colin Bryant, where they take a guy and they literally drive him all the way over to the sideline where I'm standing. And then Vakari, just the run that he made, the guys that 90% of the teams in the country, that return's coming back because somebody blocked somebody in the back. There were opportunities for some blindside blocks to blow people up that would have been a penalty or targeting. Our guys didn't do that. They were very disciplined, and that's what I was most excited about, just the discipline that we showed on the return and guys just doing their jobs. And we needed it, and certainly created a ton of energy in that stadium after that.
Yeah, sticking with special teams for a minute, how when did y'all decide on starters for your place kicker, punter, and kickoff guy? And was it kind of happenstance that all three of those positions had different guys, or was that a conscious decision? And I'm most curious about William Joyce, how y'all let him know he was gonna be the starter and how that went down.
Yeah, it was late in the week when we made those decisions. Not necessarily punter. I knew Mason was going to be the punter for a while now. He's really been punting the ball well going back to the spring. Felt pretty good about him being the punter all along. Kicker and kickoff guy were the two that were decided late in the week. We really wanted to kind of go through practice on Friday, but it was Thursday for us, the last kind of real practice we had, which would have been Friday morning for us last week. We wanted to see how those guys performed because, frankly, on Tuesday normally is when we kick off in practice and kick field goals. Wednesday is when we punt. And Tuesday, it wasn't terrible, but I wish it had been a little bit better from a kickoff standpoint and a field goal standpoint. So then we said, we're going to go through practice on Thursday and make it as game-like as we can and see how those guys perform, kickers, kickoff guys, and all that. And they were great. So I feel like coming out of practice on Friday last week, 2 days before the game, is when Joe D and then Tim McConnell, who does a great job working with our special teams with Joe, that the three of us kind of sat down and said, all right, it was trending in this direction. This is the direction that we're going to go. And then when we met as a staff on Sunday morning, confirmed all that with Joe. Here's what we're going to do: holder, snapper, kicker, kickoff guy, punt returner, kick returner. And then in regards to how he conveyed that to those guys, I don't know. That would be a question for Joe. I just know they were out there on Sunday, and he let them know at whatever point that he felt was best to let those guys know.
Probably definitely a moot point, but after the touchdown pass to Nick, was there any consideration to going for two there? Or?
Yeah, I screwed that up. That's on me. We should have. As soon as the score got kind of crazy, what was it, 7-2, and then I think it became 7-5 and 10-5, I think is what it was. Is that right? All right. Yeah, so there were some crazy scores, and me and Joe were talking, DeCamillis, on the headphones about if they, meaning Virginia Tech, were to score a touchdown, be careful. There may be some situations where they may or may not look at going for two, so let's be careful before, if they score a touchdown, Clayton, before we bring the defense off the field, let's make sure they're not going for two. Joe D, before you send we call it assault, but the field goal block team out there, let's make sure that they're not going for two. So I was talking about it with the defensive coaches, and I just didn't convey it well enough to the offensive coaches that we need to. When he scored, the extra point team ran out there. The offensive coaches and Joe D and I, at that moment, talked about it. Should we go for two? And I knew we probably should. The extra point team was already out there, so we just went ahead and kicked the extra point. Could have taken our call timeout and go for two, but I didn't want to. One, hell, I felt pretty good about the way we were playing defense, and I don't want to say that I didn't think they were going to score twice on us, but I felt pretty good about the way we were playing defense. Two, we're all accountable, and yeah, that was on me. I screwed that one up. We should have gone for two.
All right, there you go. Shane Beamer's presser as he puts the bow on Virginia Tech. And we look ahead now to SC State this upcoming weekend. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about what he had to say as the halftime show rolls along. Tyler Head, Joe Pacheco, Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyra Ed, Joe Machika, and Captain Dave along with you here. We got a little extra dose of Beamer. I guess Fink was feeling a little generous and gave us a few extra minutes from Coach there. I love the fact that he is aware of the as-wells, which is being counted in every press conference. Heard a few of them today. He used to do the reallys a lot, but he's cut down on that, and now it's the as-wells.
Yeah, it's the as-wells. My favorite was the on and on and on.
Yeah.
Caught that. There was a clip, I don't know, when I was still an intern, dubbed that into something, I think. But, yeah, picking up on that, Shane, again, getting better at the podium again. And I think that's, getting old in the South, too. You developed, vocal habits, I guess.
Shane is very online.
Yes.
Shane is aware of what's being said about him, that's for sure. But we all have a good laugh about the as-well thing.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'm sure it'll change up and, he'll fall back into, another one. But, yeah.
We'll get to some of the cuts coming up at the top of the next hour as I get those pieced together here. But one thing that he did lead off with was talking about injuries, namely to Judge Collier as well as JT Gear. And Collier went out early in the game on Sunday and came back on the sidelines, had that cast-looking thing, not a cast, a brace-looking thing on his leg, and that certainly looked severe. But according to Beamer, both he and JT Gear should be back soon. Probably not going to play this weekend, which, you don't need those guys. I think it'd be okay. Same thing was said about Dylan Stewart. If he was severely injured or moderately injured, you'd say, you know what, sit out this weekend. We don't need you. We're good. And I'd say the same thing for both Judge Collier and JT Gear.
Yeah, I would say so. Both those guys you need in your defense. But again, and the fact that Dylan wasn't mentioned is, putting Gamecock fans at ease, right? Again, had that freak shoulder thing. We were kind of talking about it earlier. If it was going to be a big deal, guess not. Let the kid eat against SC State.
I felt for JT Gear a lot because he got that sack and then immediately came up with, I guess, some kind of shoulder issue or whatever. And that's a guy that just doesn't seem to stay healthy. Again, he's been here for now 3 seasons, and he seems like he's been banged up the entire time. And, again, you saw good things out of him on Sunday when he was playing, and you hope he can get back soon and help out that other side of the line there on defense, alongside, Brian Thomas Jr. and those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And, still, I guess the second defensive end competition's still open. Saw some good things out of Des U as well. But, yeah, unfortunate for JT Gear. You really hope he can get some consistency. So, he's been banged up here, there. Just been unable to, find any consistency in college football. But a lot of potential with JT Gear. Got a lot of, length and stretch on the outside. So, a lot of potential there.
He looks the part, and a year ago, again, we didn't get a depth chart this year, so who knows. But last year, he earned the starting spot at edge in going into the season. Obviously, we didn't expect Dylan Stewart to be what he became, but thought of highly enough at least a year ago to be in one of those spots, and does seem to be part of the rotation in terms of, or part of the plan in terms of rotation this year. Just hopefully he can get back soon and factor in on the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. He's always been one of Sterling Lucas's guys that he knows he can put it in position to make plays and be reliable there. So always good to have that. Again, you need him back as soon as possible. But again, he can take this week off. Again, SC State, you don't necessarily know if you need him. You need more pressure on Diego Pavia containing him at Vanderbilt. So yeah, take this week off, do what you need. But yeah, hopefully you can get both him and the Judge back there.
We'll get more into what Beamer said coming up the top of the next hour. But as we wrap up hour number 2, Texas odds have slipped in multiple categories. We'll discuss that as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from the Walkthrough Media, and Captain Dave. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on the game. Again, we'll get back into what Coach Beamer had to say coming up the top of the next hours. I'm pulling some of those cuts from his presser here just a couple of minutes ago. Do want to remind you real quick, you can always go on to 1075thegame.com and purchase the craft beer card back for the fall. Only $59. Saves you about $300 here locally with all these different craft beer establishments. You can go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals, and purchase the craft beer card. Joe, have you sold your stock in Texas yet? Like a lot of people have coming away from week number 1?
I've not. I have sold my stock in Arch Manning being potentially one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think that Lenore's kind of sealed that up. I mean, arguably the best player in the country in Lenore Sellers, but I haven't sold my Texas stock completely yet. I don't know. I think Arch is going to be somewhere. He's going to be a good quarterback. I don't think he'll be all live up to all of the hype as we kind of saw. It took his lumps at Ohio State, but again, that's, defending national champion Ohio State, one of the blue bloods in college football. So no, not selling all of my Texas stock yet, but selling most of it in all of the Arch Manning best player in the country hype.
It is kind of interesting because the sample size that we had for Arch Manning prior to this was mainly against Mississippi State and UL Monroe last year, the 2 games he started when when Quinn Ewers went down with an injury, and he played really well in those games. But we always said, okay, that was just not the best competition. Let's see how he does against a good defense. And, well, he happened to take on a really, really good defense in Ohio State. And I'm not trying to jump off the bandwagon because I do think he's going to be a good quarterback, but I think we got to give credit to Ohio State and Matt Patricia at the same time that they just had a really good game plan for him, for a guy making his first start on the road against the defending national champions. There's jitters. No matter what your last name is, you can get caught up in that moment and be a little bit timid. So, again, I'm not ready to write him off yet, but I am interested to see how he fares after a couple weeks in SEC play, I would say. Yeah, Matt Patricia did a good job of containing him, right? They, no big plays, and that was a way Texas was going to get momentum. Big plays, silencing that Ohio State crowd over in the shoe up there in Columbus. And so, they just didn't let Arch and Texas make any big plays, make anything to generate any momentum. It seemed like Big Ten football to me, Tyler. They got, Texas got Big Ten very hard. And so, I don't know. I think it's something that Sark and them can regroup on. And again, once they get a feel for the offense and a little bit more rhythm, especially at their home stadium too, nonetheless, I think we'll see this offense come to life a little bit more. But, yeah, one of the hardest atmospheres to go win at in college football, despite Michigan doing it a lot these last couple of years. I got to imagine Ohio State probably felt a little disrespected. They were the defending national champions to be ranked number 3 in the AP poll, not even 1, 2. Right. You know what I mean? I kind of figured AP poll voters would go ahead and give them number 2 so we could have 1 versus 2 in week 1. It didn't obviously happen there. So I imagine Ohio State had a little bit of chip on their shoulder of trying to prove people wrong that, hey, Texas ain't better than us, and we'll show you that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think they made a statement there. This is, everyone was wondering, it's like the most expensive roster in college football last year. How is that going to drop off? Well, not that big of a drop off there for Ohio State and Ryan Day. Obviously, fresh new quarterback at the helm for them. Certainly didn't. Julian Sayin didn't really impress me that much. But again, got the win, and that's really all that matters. Yeah, it's one of those things that there's probably gonna be a lot of games this year with what Ohio State's schedule is and the way that defense plays, where Julian Sayin doesn't really have to be that spectacular. Right. He doesn't have to go out there and light the world on fire at quarterback. Now, he's going to have talent around him, namely guys like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate at receiver that are going to allow him the opportunity to do that. But even Jeremiah Smith didn't have a great game, had some drops, had some frustrations early, and they still managed to hang on to win. So I think it's very much a game manager is kind of a dirty word, but just don't get us in trouble and we'll be fine type of thing with Julian Sayin. Yeah, and you would think he develops too, and a little bit more time in that offense would be, good for Sayin. But yeah, we'll see. I think this defense is going to lead the way for Ohio State. And again, you saw them control the game and the tempo of the game there against Texas. Dragging them down into Big Ten football, a lot of punts, a lot of missed opportunities, no big plays, containing the quarterback, forcing the runs up the middle for a couple yards and whatnot. So Ohio State's defense, again, going to control the tempo as they did for Texas. And Texas, again, got to get back to where you were. Well, if you're a believer that Arch Manning still has the opportunity to turn things around, you want to get in on his Heisman odds, they have dropped significantly. He went from plus 650 to plus 1,600 after that one-game performance. So if you think he's going to turn it around, now would probably be the time to buy in when his odds are, quite frankly, the lowest they've been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure Lenore's odds going up. The guys sitting behind me at the Indiana Notre Dame playoff game last year are certainly feeling good about their odds, taking Lenore's as a long shot. But yeah, I think Arch's stock is probably the lowest it's going to be, Tyler, if you look at it.
Yeah.
Just because again they didn't look good in Columbus, and they have plenty more opportunities to get things back on track and be the Texas that everyone kind of expected them to be this season.
2 hours in the books, one more hour to go. We'll get back into what Coach Beamer had to say coming up at the top of the next hour as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls on. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 3. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, and Captain Dave along with you here on your Tuesday. Again, it was an hour ago that we heard from Coach Beamer there. Again, touched on the injuries a moment ago. Judge Collier and JT Gear likely not going to play this weekend, but it doesn't sound like their injuries are too severe, and hopefully we'll have those guys back for SEC play starting the following weekend against Vanderbilt. And he also as well gave the update on Travion Robertson, who's continuing to recover from his injuries. Doesn't sound like he's going to be back this weekend, but they are working to get him back soon, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. You want T-Rob back as soon as possible, but then you also don't want to, rush him back. Obviously, a scary situation with what happened. Think, everything worked out and that he's here and everything is, fine. But, yeah, you want him to ease into it. Again, you never want to rush anybody back from a situation like that. And so, good to hear the rest of those guys, too. JT Gear, as we were talking about, a little bit before this in the last hour, one of those guys who's had his fair share of bumps and bruises. So at this point, or this early on in the season, you want him as healthy as possible. So do what you can to get those guys as much rest as possible this week against SC State and have them ready for SEC play.
Now, we don't know if T-Rob's still in the hospital or not. We haven't got that specific update, but if he is still in the hospital, you think he's yelling at the TV in the hospital like he's coaching?
Yeah, most definitely. I think all coaches, like the coach instinct, especially with week one and senior team play for the first time against another opponent. Yeah, there's probably been some yelling going on for T-Rob, and he's a football guy. Went to South Carolina, mean dude, played defensive line here. So yeah, he's passionate coach, and so absolutely, I'm sure that TV took some abuse over the weekend.
Probably still grinding tape as if he is still in the hospital. We don't know for sure, but probably, I don't know, laptop or tablet or something along those lines. Somebody get me something to watch tape on so I can review what these guys did on Sunday.
Those screens have definitely been taking some cuss words over the weekend as he's been watching tape, whether it be the TV, the laptop, whatever it is. T-Rob is getting the grind on, getting it done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So good to hear that he's on the mend, and hopefully he'll come back soon. And again, we'll see what the next couple weeks are going to look like for Judge Collier as well as JT Gear, two guys that are critical parts of your defense. Again, Judge Collier, one of your starting corners, and JT, at least on Sunday, was one of those guys rotating in at edge as we expected, opposite of Dylan Stewart. So expect both those guys to hopefully we expect both those guys back soon and sliding into this defense that, again, we already talked about was off to a really good start over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good start for this defense, shoring up a lot of, question marks. I was impressed with the linebackers, Fred J.R. Johnson, one of those freaks, man, in his debut leading the team in tackles. Pretty impressive stuff from the freshman, as we were talking about earlier. But, yeah, a lot of good stuff we saw from this defense. Clayton White, again, being able to develop talent in positions where you don't necessarily have, a whole lot of talent coming into the year and just shoring up those gaps and all those question marks that everyone had coming into it.
So let's take a look at the defensive tackles, a group that we haven't talked about quite as much coming away from that game, and in reference to, obviously, the update on Travion Robertson. Dave, this is going to be cut number 4 here. Here's Coach Beamer assessing the performance he saw out of his defensive linemen on Sunday.
I thought they played. I thought they did some really good stuff. I thought they played hard. I thought they were active. Nick, Gabe, Kel, Devontae Miles, Troy Pikes, they all got in there. That's what I was proud of. Excited about was just the way that the effort that they played with, and they're strong at the point of attack. But then they're good athletes and can run. So I thought they were good, and they will continue to get better. It was great to get Troy out there. I mean, that's a guy that didn't go through spring practice for us, and he is just going to continue to get better. He was very active and brings something to us from a pass rush standpoint. So it was good. We got to continue to improve. We got to be better. We got to be better against the pass and generating pressure on the quarterback. And yes, Jameel Walker was engaged. Like the way we do things, all of our strength coaches in practice kind of hang with a position group, whether it be in summer workouts when we're doing conditioning. There were certain groups, and then in practice, they, not all the time, but they spend their time with specific groups. And Jameel, he's always with the defensive tackles during the summer. During practice, he's with them a lot, and he's not involved so much in the X's and O's aspect of it, but he's around those guys and he has relationships with them. So he was a little bit more involved last week during the week. Dove was coaching them, don't get me wrong. Coach Walker was just a little bit more active with him. And then on game day, we kept Jordan in the box because he's really, really good at what he does, just being able to communicate down on the field to Clayton and the rest of the coaches what's going on before you get the iPad in your hand and come look at it after the series. So we didn't want to lose that by bringing him down on the field. So he was still in the box. He was in charge of all the substitutions, but Jamil was able to hear and help facilitate some of the substitutions and communication as well.
Yeah, shout out to Jordan Dove for being the interim defensive line coach while, Traven Robertson's on the mend. And sounds like he was up in the press box, which is where he normally is. That's what's comfortable to him. But, Jamal Weiss down there on the sidelines kind of being his point man, relay information, talk to the guys and stuff like that. And that unit seemed to play well. He just kind of shouted out guys like Nick Barrett, who was the best when it came to stopping the run from that defensive line, as well as Troy Pikes, who had some good plays in terms of getting after Kyron Drones with Virginia Tech. So you saw good things out of them. Again, this was a unit last year that had a ton of experience that you just don't quite have this season, but guys that, again, for the most part, were pretty sought after, particularly when you talk about Goodwine and Brownlow Dinley and stuff like that. That, again, it's one game, but I liked what I saw, and hopefully that's a trend for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. These guys are setting themselves up for some development into some real dudes here. They're setting the baseline. I think they look good enough to where, by the end of the season, we're going to be talking about potentially some NFL draft picks potentially on this on this defensive line. If they can continue to develop, continue to improve. Moncal Goodwine, led that unit in tackles with 5 of them. So again, shoring it up, stopping the run has to be the MO for these guys. Continuing to go forward. But again, you love what you saw from the D-line. And just honestly, the front 7 in general from this defense, I think they all played, really well and should give you some hope in this defense going forwards.
Yeah, and that was the thing last year for South Carolina is when they had the ability to take the run away, you obviously made your opponent extremely one-dimensional. And, again, it's just one game, and I don't know how good Virginia Tech is going to be, but I like what I saw out of them so far as they held them to a pretty modest day, overall 3.1 yards per carry. And, only 115 yards there on the ground for the Hokies. So that looks promising. And obviously that will hopefully bode well for South Carolina going forward. Because, again, if you're going to survive in this league, you got to have a good push up front. You got to be able to stop that run. So far, so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyron Drones got loose a couple times, but for the most part, you kind of kept him in check. That was, the main thing is, not letting him to, get any outside freaky runs, freak type of plays that build momentum. So for the most part, again, keeping him in check, and that's always going to be, the MO in the SEC, get to the quarterback and stop the run. And so I think they did a pretty good job of it. Got a couple sacks in there too. So, a shout out to what Dylan and Moncal Goodwine, they've been doing up front.
I feel like Dylan Stewart was in Drone's face seemingly just about every other play. I wonder if he's having nightmares about him this week.
I'm sure. And then Diego Pavia, I don't know how he's not seeing, nightmares coming up. Right. That's the one guy you got to worry about if you're Diego Pavia. And so, yeah, his sack too. That's a freak sack. Just came out of nowhere, took advantage of, getting not being double teamed, which is again a rarity for him nowadays. And just exploded into the backfield and made the sack.
And it kind of gets lost for what happened on the end of the play, but he had a sack almost on the play that Drones threw the interception to J.R. Johnson, because he'd flushed him out of the pocket and basically dove at his ankles and missed, and then Drones makes the bad throw that J.R. Johnson's able to undercut and get the interception. And this is the thing when you talk about not only edge but defensive line as well, is they're truly the unsung heroes, because statistics don't tell you the entire story in terms of what they actually do, and pressures and hurries and those kind of things are extremely valuable, because that can affect, how quickly a guy is getting the ball out. That can affect the game plan that offense has for you. If they feel like they can't run the ball and can only throw, that's what they're going to do. So those guys, the numbers may not always pop off the page, but they're an important part of the defense like they were a year ago, and I like what I've seen so far from those guys, again, against a quality opponent. And Virginia Tech was replacing most of their offensive line, so maybe they're just an awful offensive line. But until proven otherwise, I'm going to have belief that this defensive front seven really is just as good as maybe just a little off from last year.
Yeah, I mean, outside of really Dylan and with JT Gear, the couple guys you were returning, there were a lot of question marks along this front seven. I saw a lot of different looks too. They were stunting them. I saw Dylan drop back into pass coverage a couple times, and then different looks with the rush where it'd be a delayed rush from a certain side, and I like what Clayton White's doing there with the stunts and different blitzing, different guys, different holes. You love the creativity early on in the year. You're going to need that to change up looks, to give teams different looks. And considering what you have right now and with the mixed bag with Fred and Sean Murphy and whatnot and Justin O at linebacker, I think you can give a lot of different looks for teams and stay multi-dimensional as you roll along, through the season. You're going to need to as a defense and if you want to make it to Clemson without getting figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, good start to the season there, and rightfully some praise there from Shane Beamer. We'll continue to talk about some of these things, coming up tomorrow as we turn our attention to South Carolina State. And he did talk about Coach Barry and what the South Carolina State program has done so far this year. They had a pretty significant win over the weekend where they came back in the last about 2 minutes to beat Wofford. So a big game there for a couple in-state schools. But, again, we're not going to beat around the bush. We know what this game is for South Carolina. It's one where you're supposed to go out there and, beat those guys pretty handily, get some backups in and stuff like that. I did think it was interesting when talking about one of the, because he talked about the SEC individual awards, but he also talked about practice awards, and he gave one of them to Cutter Woods. So I'm anticipating we're going to see more than one quarterback this weekend. Is Cutter Woods the guy that runs out there as quarterback number 2? Because here's the thing, unless
you're
Sellers
not using
get
Luke
hurt,
Doty.
You're not losing Luke Doty. You don't need that, right? Like Luke Doty does not need snaps against SC State to develop him.
Right.
He's your emergency option if, God forbid, something happens to Sellers, knock on wood that it doesn't happen. So we should see both Aaron Nolan and Cutter Woods this weekend. And I think, again, we're probably not going to get another depth chart, but I think whoever trots out there, the first time that Sellers is not on the field for an offensive drive, you're going to be like, all right, there's QB2.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, again, and barring, Sellers getting hurt with the whole Doty thing, I don't think you need to develop a 6-year quarterback very much more. We know what Luke Doty as a quarterback is. We've talked about that. But, yeah, like the QB2 for the future, I guess you will. We'll get a good look at it. Hopefully, again, if South Carolina can handle business, and then it's not like a game that A&M had with UTSA this week where you're kind of scrappy still going into the third quarter. You hope you can have this one put to bed by halftime. But obviously you probably, I would think Lenoris will see a couple drives in the third quarter if it goes exactly to plan. But then from there on out, you're going to see both Cutter and Air, I would think.
The AP poll is officially out. Where did South Carolina land, and what does the rest of it look like after a very interesting week one, especially when it comes to teams in the top 10 losing? We'll discuss that coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls on. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head and Joe Machika, along with you, Cap and Dave, producing on the other side of the glass here on your Tuesday as we move ourselves away from week number 1 of college football and get closer to week number 2. Again, Gamecocks and Bulldogs of SC State coming up Saturday night at 7 o'clock, which you can listen to right here on the game with pregame coverage starting with Gamecocks Game Day, myself and Terry Ford, that afternoon, at 2 o'clock. We have an updated AP poll coming out of week number 1 where there was quite a bit of chaos. We'll start locally, though. South Carolina, now number 10. Carolina has made their way into the top 10, catapulting over a couple of teams, including the new fierce rival to Carolina in the Illinois Fighting Illini, as they jump over them. Let's see, Arizona State dropped a spot. You had, let me see who else. Alabama fell out of the top 10. We'll get to them in a moment. But Carolina finds themselves right behind Notre Dame, who was number 6, and right ahead of Illinois, who was number 12.
Yeah, South Carolina jumping into the top 10. It's exciting. Columbia has a top 10 football team once again. I don't know if it feels like 2013 just yet, but it's good. It's I would think you're moving up, being in the top 10, being in front of Illinois, I guess, because Illinois took care of Western Illinois 52-3. Like can you take anything from that game?
Not really.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate part about not only week 1 for a lot of teams, but if you looked at the week 2 slate, there's not a ton of great games. It's going to be a lot of cupcakes. So you take the teams that did play quality opponents and give them credit for doing that.
Right.
So I think that's why Carolina did jump over Illinois, despite it only being 1 game.
Yeah, and it's also why I think they're not ranked ahead of Notre Dame. A lot of people think they drop out of the top 10, but, I mean, only losing to 3 against Miami, and Miami – tough game, and I don't know. And same goes for Clemson, right? Dropping, but LSU's ranked 3 now, and Miami's ranked 5. So I certainly giving credit to those marquee matchups week 1.
I want to give a lot of credit to Notre Dame for battling back in that game, because we talk so much about winning the middle 8. Miami won the middle freaking 8 of that game because it was like an hour of real time between when Notre Dame had meaningful snaps. They nailed out the first half, but Miami bookended the end of the first half, beginning of the second half with touchdowns, and boom, it's 21-7. And then Notre Dame gets the ball back down 2 touchdowns, fights their way back again. Unfortunately for them, does end up losing on a late field goal. But man, they fought tooth and nail in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Brian Kelly's Notre Dame teams probably would have lost by 14, 21 points in that game. You would have seen some quit. But I don't know. Again, and Brian Kelly again with LSU, big win up there in Death Valley too. But I don't know. I think Marcus Freeman's team battled back, and again, it's not over for the Irish. But they got a tough one with Texas A&M next week. Got to win that one to keep the playoff hopes alive, certainly. But able to battle back, and I think that's why they're probably ranked 9 because they were able to kind of make it a game. But if it wasn't a game, I'd see them dropping out of the top 10 for sure.
Do you want to take a guess at when the last time South Carolina was in the AP top 10 was? You want to take a guess?
2014, 13?
That's correct.
2014?
They started the 2014 season as number 9, got obliterated by A&M at home on that Thursday night, and quite literally have not been in the top 10 of the AP poll since.
It's unbelievable. And we're about to see Columbia with a top 10 football team. There's been juice in this town for these last couple of years since Beamer's been back, I guess. So it's going to be interesting to see how this town reacts to a top 10 football team. And again, big opportunity here with SC State. You would think they're still knock on wood, still going to be ranked in the top 10 after next week, heading into Vanderbilt, and certainly got to be a lot of intrigue with that one. But only increasing the buzz and the momentum of this football team right now.
I did look. Brett McMurphy, who notoriously not a fan of Carolina up to this point, did have them finally in his top 25. I believe they were 20th. So at least maybe he's finally coming around on them a little bit too.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of national, I guess, analysts that still, aren't looking at South Carolina like a quality team, and give hat tip to Shane Beamer and everything that they're doing, slowly kind of working themselves. I wouldn't say give them the blue blood label yet, but you're trending towards that, right? Continuously having your name, in the top 10, top 15.
My thing and look, McMurphy never fully explained why he didn't have South Carolina in his preseason AP top 25, but I look at his decision as well as Reese Davis of ESPN, who also didn't have Carolina in the top 25. I think they both looked at what they lost on defense and said, man, that's hard to overcome. I'm not going to have them in the top 25. And again, it's only one game, and things can certainly change, but I look at what that team did defensively on Sunday, and if I was skeptical, I'd say they look the part to me. They look like they haven't really skipped a beat with these new guys being plugged in, replacing the guys that departed. So if I was unsure, I might have seen enough on Sunday to change my mind.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And, the errors that this defense was making isn't something that, should really cause concern. It's something that they can certainly tune up. Like I was talking earlier, I think having as many guys rotate in at linebacker, defensive line, gives you a lot of different looks, a lot of different dimensions, and, helps this defense, stay, multidimensional and keep them from getting figured out too early on in the year, be able to change, make adjustments as the year goes on. So, yeah, I mean, I think on paper, this defense entering the year, especially with Fred Johnson being as, overlooked as a recruit as you can get, this defense was, the lacking part, but on Sunday certainly, played the part and checked every box, almost every box at least.
Do you know what the highest they've ever been in the AP poll is in the history of the program?
2.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it 2?
You know what year that was?
2012, 13?
Nope. Go back further.
10.
No, keep going. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Oh gosh, I don't. 2000.
Dave, do you know?
1984.
1984.
84. Yeah.
They got up to number 2. That was the year they infamously lost to Navy, that I've heard a lot about. They finished the year 11th in the AP poll.
Yeah.
Of course, you had the run in the 11-win seasons where they got all the way in the top 5 a couple times. Again, 2014 came into the season ranked number 9. Weren't able to back that up. But, for the first time in 11 years, South Carolina ranked in the top 10 of the AP poll. Now, again, this isn't the poll that matters at the end of the day, but as we've talked about a lot, right or wrong, it does influence the playoff poll that's coming up, later on in the year, that does determine who gets in and who gets left out of the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Do you think this town would survive if they ever got ranked 1?
Oh, man. In the college football playoff poll or the AP poll?
Ooh, either or. I mean, because every school kind of has a fun thing that the schools that have been ranked number 1. Like Notre Dame's got something on top of a dorm if they're ranked number 1, like a little side. I don't know. I think you think South Carolina would do something fun if they were ranked 1?
I think that's a better question to ask when they're actually within
competing
shooting distance of it. I feel like
top 10.
I feel like just cracking the top 10 is probably too early to ask that question. I imagine there would be something. I don't know what. Now, I hope we get to the point where we can actually answer that question at some point this year. But you're off to a good start. And again, I think a lot of people were understandably skeptical about what you lost a year ago and how good you could be. And look, we don't know how good Virginia Tech's going to be. They could be a 4-win team. They could be an 8-win team. And depending on how they go, that makes that loss or makes that win look better or worse as the season rolls along. But at the end of the day, you won. Your defense looked good. You held a Power 4 team out of the end zone. I don't care who it is. If you do that, you have accomplished something. And that's what Carolina did on Sunday. And I think deservingly so, has found themselves in the top 10 now.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, I bring up 1. I'm not saying rank them 1, not just yet. They still have to win a lot of football games to get there.
They do.
But it's certainly with it. It's in the realm of possibility with this schedule. If you look at it.
And my thing here too is, again, the AP poll does not ultimately decide the college ball playoff poll, but it does decide. It does influence it at the end of the day.
First couple weeks.
So as long as you're in the top 12, as long as you're in a position that would put you in the playoff, then you're good, right? Like, stay there, do enough, and look. Nobody's going to be undefeated. I've said this before. I think every SEC team is due for a loss, if not 2. So you're going to trip at some point along the way. Don't trip to bad teams. If you lost to LSU, that wouldn't be the end of the world, because LSU could be number 1 by that point in time for all we know. And we'll get to that ranking coming up here in a minute. But, beating the teams you're supposed to beat, maybe knocking down some teams that might be ranked ahead of you, and minimizing your losses and making sure it's only the teams that are really, really good. If that is the case, then that's how you keep yourself afloat and in the race for the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can only imagine a playoff game at Williams-Brice Stadium. You think about
crazy.
Yeah, right. You think about all the good atmospheres in college football. Can you imagine a playoff game at Williams-Brice? Like, I was lucky enough to be back at the one at Notre Dame, and that was unbelievable. Like, I've never seen that stadium stand for the whole game, but I can't really imagine
Probably a little bit warmer here.
A little bit warmer, yeah. It was cold and snowy and south. Oh, that was miserable, freezing.
Yeah.
But again, a little bit warmer, and then it's one of the premier atmospheres in college football. So I think a playoff game, like if South Carolina can get in a spot where they don't have a bye and can host a playoff game, this place is going to be bonkers, dude.
What does the rest of the AP Top 25 look like? We'll discuss that coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls on. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. Tyler Head here for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder, and First Palmetto Bank. If you're looking for a mortgage guru, Jacob Crowder has you covered. He's helped so many 107.5 Game listeners, and he can help you too. And we at the Game personally recommend him. Owned and operated right here in the Midlands, Jacob has local decision makers, which means quick and precise processing and underwriting. And if you're looking to make a move, give Jacob a call at 803-719-1005 or email him at jcrowder@firstpalmetto.com. Interest rates have stabilized as well as the local housing market, and now is as good a time as any to buy a house. Jacob and First Palmetto Bank have products to help home buyers. If you're considering building a home, they have no-nonsense construction loans that fit your needs. Again, 803-719-1005. If you want to give Jacob a call, and his MLS number is 198432. First Palmetto Bank is a member of FDIC and an equal housing lender. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from the walkthrough, and Captain Dave with you on your Tuesday here on the game. If you missed the last segment, Carolina is officially an AP top 10 team with the newest rankings coming out earlier on this hour after their victory over Virginia Tech over the weekend. They leapfrogged past Illinois, who was sitting at number 11, and God, who else? Alabama, who is sitting at number 8, fell well outside of the top 10. All the way to 21st. Alabama was number 8. They fall all the way down to 21st, and quite frankly, I'd have to look up the website, but I imagine there's a lot of people that may have even left them out of their top 25 with that performance over the weekend.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Bama dropping 13 spots for a 31-17 loss at Florida State, too. You would think, like we were talking in the last segment, like the voters have certainly given, credit where credit's due for playing quality opponents in week 1, and, Bama getting embarrassed in week 1, and certainly the voters making them pay for it. So, yeah, dropping like a rock pretty much in the standings, and, yeah, a lot of other teams moving up, but not good for Bama and Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, not at all. I'm trying to see what the updated look at this is. Still showing preseason as of right now, so I guess they have not released everybody's ballots as of right now. But yeah, that's a pretty significant drop, something that we don't see. And look, if they would have just lost to Florida State, in a last-second field goal or something like that, they still could have made the case for maybe being a team, somewhere inside the top 15. But when you look that poor, you're going to fall pretty far. And again, 21st. I mean, gosh, I'm trying to think. Actually, I can look this up. When the last time Alabama was outside the top 20 in the AP poll, because it has got to have been a while. Let me pull that up while we are talking here, because again, this is rarefied air.
It's not
for sure.
Yeah, not your daddy's Alabama.
It's
That's
not.
for sure.
Let's see. Go to Sports Reference, and let's see the AP. They were 17th in the AP poll at the end of last year after the loss. But let's see, they were in 2008, coming off the 7-6 year. They were 24th in the preseason AP poll. They obviously played for the SEC championship that year and ended the year number 6 overall. And I want to say that was the last time they were outside the AP top 20.
It's incredible. Yeah, and I mean, their schedule, it gets easier, I guess. I don't know. We'll have to see. Kalen DeBoer certainly has his hands full. Like we were talking about earlier, they have a lot of effort things to tune up in Tuscaloosa, and that doesn't happen overnight. You can't just go into practice that week and just start, swearing at your team and hope it's going to change things. Like, that's not how that works, unfortunately.
Nope. We have a new top dog. No shock, it's Ohio State. They go from 3 all the way to 1. Texas was preseason number 1 for the first time in program history, which is kind of shocking, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Their tenure, and I'm sure this meme's being made on Twitter, was very much like Aaron Rodgers' debut with the Jets, where it was very quick and not fun.
Right.
As Texas has fallen all the way to number 7.
Yeah, Texas dropping. We talked about Arch Manning and not buying into his stock. Certainly not buying any more of him, being the best player in the country right now. But yeah, Texas, again, they're going to have to reset. They, losing the game in the shoe, by 7. Again, Big Ten football game, like we were talking about. That defense just kind of, forced Texas's offense, into, little airspace and just, drowned them out, if you will. So yeah, it's Texas dropping down. Your Georgia Dogs, Tyler, moving up a spot with a big win over Marshall.
Yeah, I think, and that's just quite literally from Texas dropping as far as they did, because they dropped out of the top 5. Everybody else has to move up, but LSU leapfrogging Georgia. They were number 9 in the preseason poll, obviously beat a number 4 Clemson team and skyrocket all the way up to number 3. And again, we don't have the individual polls released, but I'd be willing to bet there's probably some people that have LSU voted as number 1 based off that performance over the weekend, because they looked, again, the question for them was defense, because it has been these past couple of years. They finally looked the part on defense against what we think is a very good Clemson team, and if they've got it all figured out, that's a scary unit.
Yeah, I agree. And, a lot of people were picking Clemson to win the national championship. Not a lot of folks here in Columbia doing so, but, I think Clemson was looked at as one of those teams that, Dabo, this is Dabo's year. It's wide open, perfect scenario for Dabo to get back. And not saying that, it's still time for that, I guess. But, the LSU's defense and Brian Kelly looked better. And considering where LSU was at last season, I don't know if, they seem to have righted the ship, but then they still have to go through the rest of the SEC. So it's going to be interesting to see how that team shakes out. And then I think, this game will ultimately, be a good judgment of both these two teams along this season, I guess, between the ACC and the SEC, how both teams shake out. But yeah, big win for LSU jumping, Georgia there.
So if I'm looking at this correctly, we don't have any G5 teams ranked as of right now. Looking at the others receiving votes, South Florida, who beat at the time number 25 Boise State, would be the highest ranked, or they're in the other receiving vote category, but the highest G5 team, which means they would vault automatically into the college football playoff. So if I'm looking at this correctly, I believe that means your bubble would be Illinois just missing out and Florida being on the outside looking in as well, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah. Looks like it. Yeah, Illinois being on the bubble. Yeah. And South Carolina would be in.
Because Arizona State's the highest-ranked Big 12 team.
Right.
So that put them in. Then you're taking a G5, which would be South Florida in this instance. So that would jump over them as well. So, yes, Carolina, I guess, would technically be the last team in if we were looking at this. Well, because it's straight seeding now. But, in terms of, the rankings and not the AQs, they would be the last team in based on the polls.
Yeah. Right.
So that's interesting.
Interesting. And then you're going up to a Miami or Oregon, I would think, right?
So you'd be because again, we're going straight seeding here.
Yeah.
So you'd still be 10 overall, which means you would get yourself to playing, is that Texas? It'd be the 7-10 game. Yeah,
Texas,
you play Texas.
7-10. Yeah, so it'd be a fun game.
And again, there's a lot of football to be played between now and then, and these rankings are going to move around a lot. But here's the thing again. You're in position now. As of right now, if the playoffs started today, you'd be in.
You control your own destiny.
You control your own destiny. Do everything in your power over the course of the next 11 games to stay in that window, stay in that bubble. And, again, everybody's going to lose at some point. I think Carolina's not immune to that. So if you lose, it can be on the road in Baton Rouge. Just don't get blown out. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Those kind of things. Again, you got tough games against Ole Miss on the road and things like that. You're going to trip up at some point. I just think that's how tough the SEC is. But don't get embarrassed like you did Ole Miss last year. Make those games close. So even if you do lose, as we now know, or at least what they say, the committee is supposed to give you more value for losing to better teams as opposed to beating worse teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just don't lose like Alabama did to Florida State. I think that's a pretty good example of the difference between Notre Dame losing to Miami by 3, and granted Florida State not unranked, but Florida State being unranked. It's a worse loss for Bama, but Notre Dame losing to 3 to Miami, only dropping a couple spots. I think the committee's certainly rewarding quality losses. Plain and simple, don't get embarrassed, Tyler.
Sure.
Don't get embarrassed. Stay relevant. Stay in the conversation. That's all you need to do. And, again, if you do lose a close one, it better be pretty.
By the way, speaking of Alabama, they play UL Monroe this weekend. God, if they lose that game, that's a whole nother story.
Right.
I think they'll be fine, even though that was the team that famously beat Nick Saban back in 2007.
Right.
They play Wisconsin the week after that. And that game is at home, so that should help Alabama out. But if they lose that game, we could talk about Alabama being unranked for the first time since 2007.
Right. Unbelievable stuff that would be. And sign of probably, the smoke coming out of the chimney for DeBoer's career and, at Alabama. And it's always been a tough act to follow, right? It was always kind of a job that, he was going to take, and it was going to be, under the most scrutiny ever because you're following the greatest college football coach of all time. But it's unfathomable stuff, Tyler. It feels like Alabama's been on top for forever.
There should have been a clause in Kalen DeBoer's contract that if any point during your tenure we become unranked, we can fire you with cause and not have to pay you a cent.
I'm sure all of the Tide faithful in Tuscaloosa would love for that clause to be just kind of snuck into that contract. And, I think everyone's got copies of it. as of now. So I don't know if we can sneak that in there at this point. But yeah, wouldn't they love that in Tuscaloosa? Because they've been calling for DeBoer's head halfway through last year. Like
Sure.
So I don't know what's in the water, if it's delusion or what in Tuscaloosa. But yeah, they're ready to run DeBoer out of town.
Well, there you have it. South Carolina, as of right now, would be in the college football playoff if it started today. Again, a lot of football to be played between now and then, but you're in a good spot, and hopefully South Carolina can stay there over the course of this tough schedule in 2025. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. A U-Haul All-American has found yet another new home. We'll discuss that as we wrap up the show. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machica, Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machiga from The Walkthrough, and Captain Dave. Wrap things up here on your Tuesday on the game. Again, Jay and Terry coming up with halftime show after us from 3 until 6. They'll get back more into what Coach Beamer had to say a little bit earlier on for his Tuesday presser, as well as Carolina being number 10 in the AP poll, which, again, as of right now, would technically have them in the college football playoff if things started today. Again, not to count your chickens because there's a lot of football to be played between now and then, but nevertheless an exciting place to be, this early on in the season. I wanted to hit on this real quick before we get out of here because it's such an interesting story. The transfer portal never stops giving in terms of interesting guys and interesting places. There are guys that have hung around forever. I did see last week during week 0, somebody tweeted out, this is the first season of college football not involving Cam Rising in some way since 2017. He was a freshman in 2018 and redshirted at Texas and hung around forever, went to Utah, finally retired because he was dealing with the concussions and all that kind of stuff. But those are such unique stories that because of the transfer portal, the COVID year, injuries and all that kind of stuff, you can have guys that hang around for 7, 8. In the case of Cam McCormick at Miami, 9 years playing college football. It's crazy.
Almost a decade of playing college football is absolutely insane. I made this joke when I had Jordan Kay on the walkthrough last week. I was like, the running back room's just about as old as us. And you look at Rashul Faison and Oscar Attaway, 2 elder statesmen in this game in their own right. Obviously good to have some experience there, but, those guys, certainly using up all of their eligibility that they could get. Faison certainly coming down to the wire, as we know. But, yeah, it's good to have the experience, but, yeah, at some point, you do have to move on to, greener pastures.
But, for some guys, look, not everybody's going to have the opportunity to play at the next level. And if you feel like you can extend your college career, and especially now that you can make money, why not? I go back to Zakai Ziegler with Tennessee basketball, who was definitely out of eligibility, but he tried to get more out of it because, hey, I could come back to Tennessee and make a decent chunk of change compared to, I guess, going overseas and play basketball
playing
somewhere.
In the G League?
I don't even know if the prospects for that were there necessarily. So he took an opportunity to try, and I don't blame him for trying because you could probably make more at Tennessee compared to playing internationally somewhere. He got denied on that, obviously, but man, shoot your shot because you never know.
Yeah, you never do know. And again, talking about TJ Finley and whatnot, and it's like so many homes for TJ Finley. It's crazy. The portal nowadays.
So TJ Finley's a name that you may remember very well. Started off at LSU back in 2020. Has been at Auburn for 2 years, Texas State, Western Kentucky. Was set to be at Tulane this year. Got arrested earlier on in the year, and we hadn't really heard a whole lot from him. And now is transferring to Georgia State after the season's already started.
Yeah, who knows? It's the closest thing to free agency as we've seen in college football. Yeah, TJ Finley, he's got a million different homes. As you mentioned, U-Haul All-American. I don't know if his stuff has ever been unpacked, if you will. But, finding a different home and one of those guys that, you hope stays at Georgia State, I guess, or maybe moves on to different football.
This got to be his last year.
Right, yeah. He's running out of eligibility, and, I would assume coaching's in his future sometime here soon.
Yeah, and again, he never he started most of that season, or started some of that season, I think, at Auburn a couple years ago. I have stats in front of me, actually.
Yeah.
Started, 3 games in each 2021 and 2022. That was the Harsin era, which in and of itself was a disaster. Started most of the season for LSU back in 2020, 13 games starting in Texas State in 2023, and 3 games last year at Western Kentucky. And I don't know if he would have been in line because, remember, he got arrested and Tulane lucked out because Jake Retzloff got kicked out of BYU in the middle of the summer. So he transfers over to
crazy situation.
I know, that whole thing is wild. So he transfers over. By the way, they took it to Northwestern over the weekend to start off their season. They got a good shot at being the G5 representative in the playoff because Jake Retzloff was darn good at BYU, and he's going to be darn good at Tulane.
Yeah, and, again, that whole situation's wild. But yeah, Tulane getting the job done, getting Retzlaff in the portal. Finley again without a home finds it at Georgia State, a team that had their fair share of issues. Both before their first game too.
Yeah.
With a pre-game incident with one of their transfer cornerbacks.
Yeah.
Another crazy situation in college football. So maybe TJ Finley, the guy who's been everywhere, will provide some calm and consistency to Georgia State. Who knows?
Well, here's the thing: if he was good enough, he would have stuck somewhere. He tried to stay in the SEC, didn't work. He was okay when he was at Texas State, but there's a reason why he can't stick somewhere, because it's just not working for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't know. You wish the best for the kid, and maybe a coaching career, coming up here soon, or I don't know, personality. Can you be a football personality? I don't know. I don't know what's next for him, but you wish the best for the kid.
Well, here's the thing: with how long he's been in college, I said the same thing about Cam Rising. I hope he's at least got his doctorate, because he's got enough school paid for at this point in time that he should have some kind of meaningful degree that hopefully he can use in the world outside of football. Because again, it does not seem like the pros are in his future.
Right. Yeah. You would hope he's got all kinds of different degrees at this point, Tyler. With as many, I don't know if those credits transfer over or why. Going to that many schools, are you really taking that much? That many classes? Is he even close to a degree?
I transferred from community college to a major university, and that was one transfer, and that was complicated enough. I can't imagine doing this 4 or 5 times over the course of your academic career.
Unbelievable.
Ridiculous. Well, anyway, good luck to him. Georgia State Panther. We'll see how that works out. That'll do it for the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Coming up next, it's post-game show with Jay and Terry on your Tuesday on the Game.